What is up, everybody? Purple and Gold podcast for Sunday, June 14th. Back in the saddle, back in the Tiger Den in beautiful St. Charles Parish, Louisiana. And the LSU lineup for 2027 in baseball is certainly coming into view after some big announcements, both returning and in the transfer portal. So when we last spoke, LSU had added the number one player in the transfer portal in former Notre Dame outfielder Bino Waters, who is now an LSU outfielder. And since we last spoke, Stephen Milam made the decision to return to LSU. He has officially withdrawn his name from the Major League Baseball draft. He will be back at LSU. He will be LSU's starting shortstop. This was a very creative deal, as I understand it, that LSU put together. I think Stephen Milam's draft grade was somewhere in the 4th to the 6th round. It is sort of being reported in places that LSU's rev share offer was more than what he would have gotten had he been drafted in the middle to upper part of the 4th round. And that doesn't account for any true NIL that Stephen Milam will almost certainly get, as he will be far and away one of, if not the most popular players, not just on LSU's baseball team next year, but on LSU's campus. A true chance to be a legacy, to be a 4-year player, to try to get LSU back to the postseason and back to Omaha. He cited all of those reasons as his reasons for coming back. LSU then added former Florida second baseman Cade Curlin. Curlin has also withdrawn his name from the MLB draft, and he will be LSU's second baseman next year. He and Stephen Milam were teammates on a 16 and under travel ball team. That certainly factored in. Curlin was a 4-year player at Florida. He's had over 700 at-bats against SEC teams. He's been in the World Series. He homered in Game 3 of the 2023 College World Series Finals against LSU. He hit 2 home runs in the series this year at Alex Box Stadium. This guy was a freshman All-American, hit 17 home runs on that runner-up team for Florida. He dipped a little bit in 24, but he still hit 14 home runs. In 25, he was injured. He only played in a handful of games. And this year he hit, I think, 240-something with 9 home runs. And Florida was under the impression that he wanted to begin a professional baseball career. He entered the portal. People thought he was using that for leverage. Quickly signed on with LSU. He's now withdrawn his name from the draft. What I like about this is, A, he's an excellent fielder. B, you have 4 years of experience at the highest level. You've seen this guy in Omaha. You've seen him in a road regional at Coastal. You've seen him in every SEC venue. No offense to the Zach Yorks and the Braden Simpsons, but this is not that. Now, he did not have a tremendous year this past year, but the thought is 1 year removed more from the injury, playing in a different environment, playing with different players, back playing with Milam. Could he be a 270, 10, 12, 14 homer guy in the right LSU lineup? I think the answer is yes. So when you look at those 2 additions, this shifts Dawson Park, the Texas State shortstop transfer, over to third base. So you would have Park, Milam, Curlin, and Mason Braun around the infield, assuming no more additions. And then I think it gives you Jack Ruckert as sort of your utility infielder, backup player. I don't think Ruckert's going anywhere. He's a Baton Rouge guy, a Catholic high kid. I think he'll stay. I think he'll put his nose in there and compete. And I do think there may be a role on this team for him somewhere, as a defensive replacement, just as a utility guy who could play a bunch of different spots. My guess is they'll work him some at third base in the fall. The guy that I think this leaves out a little bit is John Pearson. Because if you figure Cade Beatty and Omar Cerna are going to play catcher and DH, it doesn't really leave an opening for John Pearson to play. They tried him a couple of times at first base, and it just wasn't great. He wasn't great at third, but he was better at third than he was at first. I mean, in theory, I would hope he sticks around. It's an LSU family, him and his brother. Obviously Josh played, and you would hope he sticks around. Maybe a right-hand bat off the bench, pinch hitter, power guy. He did have 8 home runs in a fairly limited number of at bats. I suppose you could work him some at first base, and if the bat really came around, maybe Mason Braun can play the outfield, but we'll get to that next, because the next domino that dropped this morning was Tulane transfer outfielder Jason Wachs has committed to LSU. So now you've got Waters in left and Wachs in right, or vice versa. Wachs is a 2-year player at Tulane, a 2-year starter. He hit 12 home runs this past year, batted .275. We know what Jay Johnson has done with some of these guys in the past. They've really turned on the offense for some guys. I believe they'll do this for him. So there's really only one starting spot open in the projected opening day lineup, and that would be center field. Right now, you would think that would be William Patrick as a returner, a great athlete. This was his first year really focusing only on baseball. He played football in high school, but he did play a handful of games as a starter in right field when Jake Brown was hurt. He didn't hit very well. LSU does have some highly thought of, projection outfielders in the high school ranks. We'll see if any or all of them get drafted. Nate Davis, Malachi Washington. We'll get into that when the draft gets closer. I do believe that LSU will be done in the transfer portal in the outfield now. I think they will let center field shake out, right? Whether that's Patrick, whether that's a freshman, whether that's, we could all dream about Derek Curiel, right? Or whether that's John Pearson or somebody's bat comes around. Maybe Pearson plays some at first. Maybe Braun plays some in left. Maybe Waters could play some in center. That's not ideal, but you get where I'm going with this. I think they're done, maybe offensively as a whole, in the transfer portal. Jay Johnson did give an interview with Michael Cobble last week, the one where he smirked about at Cobble when Cobble said Milam was definitely gone. And then, of course, we know that Milam came back. It's also the one where he stepped away to take the call from Bino Waters' commitment while he was doing the interview. And Jay said they were going to look more at adding relievers and depth to the pitching staff. And I think that makes some sense. Kason Evans, William Schmidt, Cooper Moore are all in their money years. They're all going to come back because they know they have a spot in the rotation or a chance to fight for a spot in the rotation. You've added Landon Hood, who can maybe develop and start. We know Marcos Paz and Reagan Ricken could develop into starters. So I think if you went out and added a true Friday night guy, and I don't know if they have the money for that now anyway, after allocating money to Milam, and I'm sure they paid for Bino Waters, and I'm sure they outbid Florida and Miami for Jason Wachs. I think that the guys you will see them add now will be depth pieces on the pitching staff. And then the other question would be, how do they treat Devin Sheeran and Santiago Garcia? Where are those two guys at in the draft? I think it's almost certain that if both guys express an interest in signing, they would both be drafted. Sheeran in the top 5 or 6 rounds, Garcia in the top 10 rounds. If either one of them has expressed any interest in coming back to LSU, that could make them a tougher sign. It could make for interesting developments. We'll talk about all of that when the draft gets closer next month. We'll talk a lot about LSU's freshman class, and we'll talk about where some of those guys fall. I know Curiel's dropped some hints about coming back. I know he's a draft eligible sophomore. Every projection that you see in the draft for Derek Curiel has him being drafted where he would get a bonus somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 or $4 million. I just don't see Derek Curiel coming back. Same goes for Jake Brown. I think the additions of Waters and Walks tell you that, right? There's not room for both of those guys. Jake Brown's not coming back, and neither is Curiel. So we move towards the pitching side, and I suspect LSU, Jay Johnson, will be relentless this week, and they will start to add some more names on the pitching side. Just a brief thought on the way this has played out so far. This is kind of what we talked about, right? With LSU being home so early, it gave them a chance to attack the portal. And we talked about Waters and Hood and Park being 3 of the top 13 guys in the portal. You get Milam to come back. You add Curlin with SEC experience. You get Jason Walks, who's, going to be on every top 50 or 100 list in the portal. This was, I don't want to use the word benefit, but this was the cause, right? The cause and the effect of missing the tournament and being home early was that you get to attack the transfer portal. And look, LSU, outbid and out-recruited Texas for Bino Waters, right? And is it because Texas was preparing to go to Omaha and playing in the World Series? Maybe. LSU lost out on Volchko, who threw a gem last night for Georgia, right? Georgia lost in the regional round last year. LSU played all the way to the national championship. And until some kind of calendar gets fixed, this is the situation you find yourself in. Now, that doesn't mean you want to miss the NCAA tournament every other year or have a bad year every other year. And I don't think LSU will, and I don't think Jay Johnson accepts that. This is just the cause and effect of being at home earlier, being able to attack the portal, and then you get the cherry on top of the Stephen Milam decision. This is going to be a very, very good LSU lineup, assuming everyone stays healthy. You've got a nice mix now. Waters, Walks, Braun can bat from the left side, all bat from the left side. Milam can switch hit. Curlin brings some right-hand thump. Park hit 13 home runs. Aaron Beatty really took off, right? He was great. You figure Waters will be great. And, the sky's the limit for guys like Mason Braun and Omar Cerna. Maybe Mason Braun can add a little more power. Maybe Cerna can become a little more well-rounded. I think defensively in the infield, this team will be much, much better now. You'll have a shortstop playing third base. You've got, statistically the greatest defensive shortstop in LSU history in Stephen Milam. Cade Curlin's been a stalwart at second base. That should help. We need Aaron Beatty and Cerna to be better defensively behind the plate, certainly, and we need LSU's pitching staff to be better, right? Can't have the wild pitches, can't have the hit batters. And that, I think, is where the trajectory of next year's team will go. This team now, as it's currently constructed, this is on Nate Yeskie and LSU's pitching staff to erase the bad years that a lot of these guys had and to develop into the better versions of themselves. Kason Evans, William Schmidt, Cooper Moore, all of those guys need to develop, and I think that's up to Nate Yeskie to do that, and that's where this situation will be for LSU's 2027 pitching staff. We will be back to cover it all. We'll talk all about it. I'm excited about the additions that LSU's made. The College World Series is going on right now. It's been great. The SEC has one side of the bracket. It was wonderful baseball yesterday, and Ole Miss will try to avoid elimination today. I will be on WRBE-FM this Wednesday with Coach Bruce Thornton at noon to talk all things college baseball. I hope everybody listened the week before. And please like and subscribe to the channel. Please share. Please follow me on social media. And as always, go Tigers. Always, always, always be good to one another and boot up.